Since the turn of the 21st century, NBA players have been making ungodly amounts of money. Some of the figures they've made could be the GDP for a small third world African country. With that amount of money in the bank, you'd expect that they would have enough money that would last generations. Money that would be moved from one generation to another. Money that would ensure that the player's family did not have to be bothered about going broke for the rest of their life. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Many NBA players lose their wealth just years after their careers have ended, and some don't even wait that long. They enter serious debts while they are still in the game playing. Sometimes it's a direct result of a bad investment, other times it's bad deals, and most times it's a direct result of their lavish lifestyle and flamboyant spendings. Today we're going to talk about NBA players that went completely broke. Before we get into all that, if you want to win a PS5 with NBA 2K22 and Madden NFL 22 included, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter the giveaway. Yeah, I know, Pippen is not completely broke, but he still isn't as rich as he should have been, and it's mostly because of the Pippen effect. And if you don't know what that is, that's because it's not a real thing, I just came up with it. The Pippen effect happens when Scottie Pippen's brain distributes all of his intellect towards the basketball parts of his brain, leaving every other part lacking. I don't care if you think it's funny, because how else do you explain this? In 2002, Pippen bought a Gulfstream jet for $4.3 million. And guess what? It couldn't fly. If you're asking how does one buy a... I'll just stop you right there. Don't ask me. I don't suffer from the Pippen effect. Another time, he was down suing his own management firm for losses through terrible real estate investments, claiming that it was their fault and not his. How much did he lose? $3 million. Pippen should have risen to the heights of someone like Jordan, at least wealth-wise. He had everything from the skills to the popularity, and he was even close to MJ at the time. Right now, he should be somewhere in the Maldives, basking under the sun, smoking a Cuban, and watching the latest woman he's been simping on twerking for him under a shade. But no, he is now an analyst with ESPN, giving his thoughts on the 90s and working with MJ. If you're asking why he's working with ESPN, analyzing in his 50s, again, don't ask me. I don't suffer from the Pippen effect. When Larry Johnson was with the Hornets, he was quite unstoppable. The man became popular very quickly and even appeared in the original Space Jam with MJ. Over the length of his entire career, Johnson would make around $83 million. He made that in the 90s into the early 2000s. When you adjust for inflation, it's an ungodly sum that was eventually drained irreverently. Johnson was quite the playboy, and his love for women would bear some serious fruits. 5 children with 4 different women. He had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in child support for every one of those children. One baby mama, a woman named Laura Tate, was asking for $900,000 in child support. Johnson couldn't pay the money, and rumor goes that he had even tried to get the woman to abort the baby. Like that was ever gonna happen. By 2017, Larry couldn't even pay a dentist that he owed $2,700. He had eaten the dust to the point that it was normal for him. Thankfully, the Knicks have pulled him out of unemployment, and he's now a business operations representative operating behind the curtains of the NBA. Right from the start, Antoine Walker had everything laid out for him. In college, he was a stud, and by drafting season, he was the 6th overall pick in the mythical 96 class. He went on to become a 3-time All-Star and earned $108 million throughout his career. $108 million, and yet 2 years before he retired, Walker was filing for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. This was in 2010. And how did he get himself into this mess? Well, Walker was generous. A little too generous and unwise. The man wanted his entire family to live lavish and extravagant lifestyles, and so he bought them cars, jewelry, and houses. The story goes that he helped more than 30 people go from poverty to wealth. When addressing this, he stated, "I gave them whatever they wanted and spoiled them. You can't do that. It ended up being an open ATM throughout my career. I created a very expensive lifestyle. That's how you lose your wealth." To make the situation even worse, at the time he was retiring is when the 2008 recession was setting in. So even the good investments he had tanked. His real estate went down and he was forced to pay $20 million to the banks. He had gambling debts he had to uncover. He found himself walking the tightrope between law and outright criminality when he started filing false checks. And at the end of it all, he found himself at the bottom of the barrel. These days, he's been climbing out slowly and with shocking positivity. He now speaks to young athletes about the mistakes he made, using his own life experiences to educate others. Latrell became a self-fulfilling prophecy. His own words came to bite him in the ass in the wrong way. We can all remember when he turned down a 3-year, $27 million contract because he felt he was worth more than that, famously saying, "I've got a family to feed." Famous last words. After that dramatic punctuation, the man was not given any other offers, and the rest, is history. Sprewell made $97 million through his career, but after a series of bad decisions, he lost almost everything. Sprewell also had an infamous bad attitude. The man choked his coach in the middle of a game and punched him in the dressing room hours later. His financial management skills, on the other hand, were crap, and he bled out all of his finances. In 2007, he was sued by his own family to the tune of $200 million for walking out on them. His yacht got repossessed because he couldn't pay for it. He lost his first mansion and his second mansion and was owing $3 million in back taxes. By 2015, he was homeless, with no family, and was living like every other person. Sometimes I imagine he regrets turning down that $27 million, but just shrugs it off because, now he doesn't have a family to feed. He wouldn't have needed that money anyway. Who is Eric Strickland? Well, I'm not surprised you don't know that name. Eric went undrafted in the 1996 NBA draft, but was brought on as a free agent with the Dallas Mavericks, where he spent 4 seasons and averaged a career-high 12.8 points per game in 1999 to 2000. He went on to have 8 good years in the NBA and earned a modest yet sweet sum of $13 million. So why is Eric Strickland on this list? Well, it's because of family. The man trusted his pops with his money instead of hiring an actual financial advisor. His pops went to buy a plot of land that was on sale for $1.8 million and was reportedly worth $3 million. You can guess it wasn't with that. The appraisal was a dud and it was hardly worth half the amount it was bought for. Along with other bad investments, Strickland went broke very quickly and lost the little he had. It's gotta hurt when you were able to make that kind of money even after going undrafted and still lose it because of your own father. You would think with Rodman's lifestyle, he probably earned some $100 million figure through his career. But this was in the 80s and 90s, and salaries like that back then were mostly seen in drug cartels. Rodman made $27 million, which was still a hefty sum of money in the 90s. So how did Rodman lose his money? Well, where do we begin? Let's tick the usual boring boxes. Child support? Check. Unnecessary luxury spendings? Check. Huge parties? Check. Oh yes, and Dennis Rodman also got scammed. Have you heard of Peggy Fulford? She was a close friend of Rodman, who managed to build a sports management business with him as a client, along with many others, including other NBA and NFL players. She called herself a financial advisor, and eventually she was given control of his bank accounts. Basically, she was involved in a massive scandal with herself at the center. At one point, she controlled 85 different bank accounts of famous athletes and celebrities, moving money from one account to another in some crooked, self-sufficient Ponzi scheme that made her insanely rich. She also had a decent part-time job as a money launderer before she was caught and sentenced to 10 years in prison. This one hurt Rodman real bad and he lost millions. In business, there are no friends, no families, only business. If you hate this quote, then remember this story of Derek Coleman. You might be thinking, oh, another player that lavishly spends his money on things he doesn't need. Well, you'd be wrong. He wasn't a lavish spender. He wasn't a gambler. He also didn't spoil his family with things that would give them an unhealthy appetite. Derek made and lost his money through selfless investments. Yep, he invested the majority of his $87 million into development projects in Detroit. According to his lawyer, Matt Burke, Derek grew up there, but in the 90s and early 2000s, the city was falling off hard. Attempting to revitalize Detroit, Coleman's desire to invest in the city clouded his judgment. Derek had good intentions, but good intentions don't always equal wise investments. He invested in various communities throughout the city of Detroit by developing real estate, creating jobs, and revitalizing business opportunities. But due to the state of the economy, including the decline in the real estate market, his investments tanked. This was also during the terrible 2008 recession, so while some of his investments included Hilton hotels and fast food chains, nothing came from it. Everyone was suffering economically, and Derek took some of the hardest hits. Derek still lives in Detroit today, living his life contentedly. And here's a lesson for everyone. Sometimes, all you have to do is play it safe. Talented beyond belief and now broke beyond a doubt. Through his storied career in the NBA, Iverson made around $250 million. Yet, Allen managed to blow the money away like it was nothing. Sure, he might be on Reebok's payroll, collecting a sweet $800,000 till he kicks the bucket, but you just cannot compare. In 2012, Allen was in front of a judge talking about how his expenses were around $4 million on his $800,000 income. I'm not very good at calculus, but that math doesn't sound right. I don't know if he's still living in a bubble, but Iverson is old school. How old? Let's say before banks existed, kind of old. Allen keeps his money in garbage bags around his house, which of course attracted flies that wore hoods and wielded guns. He also admitted that he didn't know how much cash he kept around his house, so he wouldn't even know if he was robbed. He had the most insane spending habits on this list, habits that would make the Pippen effect have the Pippen effect. First, he was averaging $30,000 to $40,000 at strip clubs every weekend. Another time, he forgot where he parked his car, and instead of looking for it like a normal person, he just decided to buy a new one. Even Pippin would look for the car. Now, Iverson might never actually go broke in the sense that he would become homeless or anything, but when you think of just how much this man burned, it makes absolutely no sense.